Do you ever feel like you're living in survival mode? Today, I'm going to share my 3 top tips for how you can use food and the way you eat food to bring you out of diet mentality and survival mode. Welcome, sisters, to the Body Ally podcast, where we learn how to stop battling with our bodies and with food from a faith-based approach that's brain science backed. We learn instead how to be an ally with our bodies, partnering with our bodies and accepting them as the gift that God intended, learning how to pursue health goals, not in an effort to prove value, but as an act of love. And I am your host, Kerrie Nygaard. All right, ladies, so I'm going to share with you my top 3 tips for coming out of survival mode. And we're going to use our behaviors and the way we think about food to do it. Now, what is survival mode? What's that all about? Well, survival mode is not a medical term, so it's not something that you could look up as a diagnosable condition. But we all know what survival mode is, and it's the state of just living moment by moment in terms of survival. So I talk a lot about how you have a lower brain and a higher brain. Your lower brain is survival obsessed. Your brain is hardwired for survival, and that is the subconscious hardwiring survival instincts of your brain is your lower brain. Where up in your higher brain, this is where your executive functioning, your creative brain exists. In this part of your brain, this is the part that you use to create, to expand, to thrive. And if you're in survival mode, you're not thinking of creation, you're not thinking of goals, you're not thinking of expansion and connection and growth. You're thinking of just getting from moment to moment. When we're in survival mode, that's going to trip the nervous system to activate. You're going to be heavily alert. You're going to be not moving back and forth between the digest and rest and alert or activated side of your nervous system. That's the parasympathetic and the sympathetic side of your nervous system. Instead, you're going to spend more time in the sympathetic side of your nervous system, and you're going to get kind of stuck there. That's when it leads to issues with adrenal fatigue and cortisol issues and chronic inflammation and chronic fatigue, right? And so survival mode is not a state of health and thriving. Now, are there different times in our life where we might find ourselves in survival mode? Yes, especially in this day and age. Why? Because we live so much of our time underneath fluorescent lights, underneath unnatural light, inside looking at screens. We are creatures of creation, therefore we will thrive best in creation, in sunshine, in nature, interacting with the setting in which we are created. We're part of creation. All creation revolves around the sun. Therefore, because we're part of creation, we also need to be around the sun. But because of the way our society is and also the way that our culture is, it's so much of our culture weighs worth, that you're more worthy the more productive you are. So if you do more output, if you work harder than the other person next to you, then somehow you're more valuable or more worthy. Now, I'm all for getting a good to-do list checked off. Okay, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have some level of productivity. I got lots of pioneer stock in my ancestry. I'm all for going and doing and accomplishing. But when we think that we're more valuable than someone who is not as productive, or that we're not as productive or as valuable because we're not as productive, this is when we come into problems. I remember whenever I was pregnant, I would feel unwell and I physically could not do this output that I was used to. And I would think that I was less valuable. Now, I changed my mindset around that. I understood. I had some practice since I had half a dozen children. I got some practice at it and I realized that growing a body is productive. But not only that, my value is not based upon my level of perceived productivity. My life, my existence in of itself brings me value. Why? Because I did not create myself. My Creator did. And He placed that divine worth within me. I do not have the power to change my worth. I do have the power to put myself in a position where it might be difficult to feel that worth, or I can place myself in an environment or in a position to better be able to greater feel of that worth, but I cannot change my value. I do not have that kind of power. Similarly, in diet mentality, it's the same kind of idea. If I make myself smaller, then I'm more valuable. No, that's not true. You are equally valuable with 100 pounds more on your body or less 100 pounds on your body or any number of pound on your body. Your value has nothing to do with the amount of poundage or stored adipose tissue, stored energy on your body. Now, you may desire to experience your body different. That's a health goal. But a health goal does not add to your value, though it may change the way that you experience your body. This is different. Okay, so when we're in survival mode, because of the way that our society is, and because of screens, and because of not being in nature, not being grounded to the earth, not being out in the sun, spending too much time behind artificial light, not living in accordance with our circadian rhythm, not eating foods that are as close as they come from the source as possible. Now, I'm not saying that you should never eat processed foods, but when the mass majority of a culture's diet is coming from food that has been changed and changed and changed and processed several times by the time it comes to your mouth, so it doesn't hardly resemble the way it came from the earth, that's going to have an effect. It's going to change you, and it's going to send you and be part of the puzzle that's causing someone to be in survival mode. I recently attended a marketing conference online, and the presenter said that people, by and large and in general, now realize this is a marketing presentation, and so this person's talking about how do we get people to pay attention to what you can offer them. Okay, that's the whole point of marketing. My goal, my mission, is to help women come out of diet mentality, accept their bodies as the gift God intended, and to move forward and being able to reach health goals. Okay, that's my whole goal. I want women to no longer struggle with their God-given bodies and to still be able to reach their health goals. That is, I'm all for that. Okay. However, I need to learn how to market towards people to do that. And this particular person, she said in her marketing presentation, she said, people by and large are maxed out on time, overwhelmed with information, and have a low capacity to execute. And as she said that, I said, I think I'm starting to feel the same way. I'm starting to feel maxed out on time, overwhelmed with information, and I'm starting to feel like I have a lower capacity to execute. I did not used to feel that way, and it's only been in the last few months that I started to feel that way. And I thought, what has happened? How did I get to this place? And right after she said that, I decided other people may be that way, but not me. Not me. So I drew a line in the sand, so to speak. I refuse to be maxed out on time. I refuse to be overwhelmed with excessive information, and I desire to have a high capacity to execute. We all have limitations, but I want to be able to execute, move on those things that are important to me. Okay, so based on everything that I just said, realize that our society is wired to cause our nervous systems to go into a place that could be called survival mode. Trauma can also contribute to this as well, early childhood trauma or even just any kind of trauma. We can use food and the way we eat food to help come out of that survival mode. So I'm going to give my 3 tips. Now, none of these tips are going to have to do necessarily with eating specific foods, though there are specific foods that are especially great for your nervous system. That's not what this podcast is going to address. Are you ready? Tip number 1 is to eat when you're hungry and stop when you're satisfied. When you eat in connection with your hunger cues and with your wake-sleep cycle, with your circadian rhythm, this is being in flow with your body. And when you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're satisfied, this helps bring a sense of safety and trust to your whole being. When you don't eat when you're hungry and when you overeat, it overburdens your body. It's these pendulum swings. When you eat when you're hungry and stop when you're satisfied, it brings a sense of safety and peace to your whole being. It helps stabilize hormones as well. Tip number 2, when you eat, so you're eating, number 1 was to eat in accordance with your hunger cues. Number 2, when you eat, sit down without screens and eat your food. When you're standing up and moving around, your body is not in a state to receive nutrition, and it's going to keep you activated, and your body's not going to absorb the nutrition well. In order for your digestive system to turn on, you have to activate the parasympathetic side of your nervous system. And in order for that side of your nervous system to be activated, your vagus nerve has to be stimulated. You have to sit down and bring a sense of calm. Sit down, take a few deep breaths, take 3 to 6 deep breaths, and you will have activated the parasympathetic side of your nervous system. This will turn on your digestive system, your rest and digest side of your nervous system, so that your body can actually absorb the nutrition coming in. When you eat food, standing up, moving around, looking at screens, your body is not in a state to receive nutrition. Okay, so number 1 was to eat and flow with your hunger and fullness cues. Tip number 2 was to sit down without screens and get into a calm state before you eat. And tip number 3 is when you eat a meal, so this isn't, we don't want to be snacking all day long. We want to eat when we're hungry, stop when we're satisfied, and sit down without screens to eat. Would I say you should never eat in front of a screen? No, not never, but for the most part, 80 to 90% of the time, do it without a screen, and make sure that each meal contains the components to satisfy your body. Your body needs proteins, it needs fats, it needs carbohydrates, and it needs veggies. Now, I know that vegetables are a carbohydrate, but I put them in their own category. Why? Because they're so full of nutrition and nutrients and phytonutrition and just all the things that so many things that your body needs, and fiber. So we want to make sure we have a good amount of protein. What's a good amount? I usually say shoot for about 30 grams. If you have a little less, no problem. If it's more, even better. We want to make sure there's a fat involved, and that not heavy fat, but a fat involved. And try to get whole good sources of fats. Avocado, coconut, animal fats, like things that are close to how they come from the earth. Now that doesn't mean you should never have oils, but let's seek for as close as we can come, as close as how it comes from the earth as possible is a good rule of measure. Now, do I eat processed foods? Yes, I do, but we strive as best as we can to keep food simple and to keep them close to how they came from the earth as possible. That's it. I do cook my foods, right? But we want to, again, keep it simple and keep them close to how they come from the earth. Okay, so we want to have proteins, we want to have vegetables, we want to make sure there's a fat involved, and we want to have some carbohydrates. Unless you have insulin resistance issues, you need to make sure you have a carbohydrate involved. A good whole carbohydrate, legumes, whole grains. Some people say grains are terrible for us. I don't share that belief, but if grains don't agree with you, then don't eat them. That's fine. But good quality carbohydrates, fruits. Vegetables are technically a carbohydrate, but I put them in their own category, okay? And strive for as many vegetables as you can tolerate, okay? They're just wonderful for you. So again, when you're giving your body the nutrition it needs by hitting those 4 groups, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and vegetables, usually I put them in the order of protein, vegetables, fats, then carbohydrates, because it's not difficult to get in carbohydrates. It's not difficult to get in fats, but a good amount of protein and vegetables are usually more difficult to do, okay? So we want to make sure we have what our body needs. We want to make sure we sit down without screens to receive it. Take a few deep breaths, get into a place of calm, and we want to eat in accordance to our hunger and fullness cues. When we do these 3 things, it helps bring our body out of survival mode. Even just the process of sitting and chewing and like staring out the window, that chewing stimulates your vagus nerve and helps to reset and bring a sense of safety to your whole nervous system. Let it be boring. We think, oh, I got to look at a screen, because we're always used to being stimulated and having a constant dose of dopamine through a screen on our phone. No, we need to learn how to just chew and stare at the wall or look out the window for 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes at a time. This will regulate our nervous system and help to reset our nervous system throughout the day. When we sit down to eat, it also helps us psychologically register that we've had an experience with food. If you're constantly grabbing and pulling and grazing, your being hasn't registered that we've actually sat down and nourished our body. Your body's a gift from God, and the process in which you fuel your body, both in content and in the way in which you do it, is important. All right, so ladies, if you think and feel that you identify as being in survival mode, the way in which you eat food can help pull you out of survival mode. There's lots of other things you can do that help regulate and pull you out of survival mode, but these are my 3 tips in terms of that help bring you out of survival mode. And I'll say them one more time. You want to eat and flow with the eat when you're hungry, stop when you're satisfied. You want to sit down without screens to eat most of the time, and you want to make sure that each meal that you eat contains proteins, veggies, fats, and carbohydrates. All right, go to it. See how this works for you. Thanks so much. Remember, you were not put here in this life to constantly be battling with your body and with food. You were put here to thrive, create, and understand God's purpose for you and to fulfill it. Check the description down below. Click on the links to join me in my next workshop, maybe to watch one of my free online webinars, or to work with me in the Freedom with Body and Food, or FBF program. Please share the podcast with others. Please rate and give reviews on this podcast. When you do, it helps bring this podcast up for others who search it, and it helps bring this message of the Body Ally movement to other people, where we're no longer battling with our bodies. Instead, we're partnering with them. We're aligning with them as the gift that God intended. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.